Now, we've covered Andrew Yang for a long time on this show. He's the only presidential candidate we've actually conducted an interview with. Very thankful for that. And we've been really happy with, him bringing up the concept of UBI and a lot of these really new, especially what are they called, the democracy bucks, every person having like $100 in election cycle. I think that's wonderful, but it's now become very clear that Yang has completely abandoned any semblance of Medicare for all. He still advertises as if he's Medicare for all. His ads still come out with that, but after his bill, which is a year after almost everyone else's has come out, let's just show you the clip.
A healthcare system with Medicare for all.
But I've looked at your healthcare plan. In fact, I've got it right here. And this plan does not call for Medicare for all. In fact, it doesn't even have a public option. So why the dissonance here?
We need to move towards universal health care that's high quality and nearly cost-free for Americans around the country. But reality is we have millions of Americans who are on private insurance right now, and taking those plans away from them very quickly would be untenable for many, many Americans. To me, the goal of the government has to be to demonstrate that we can outcompete private plans and then push them out of the market over time. And that's what we're proposing.
But I'm confused. Your ad is explicit. Your ad says Medicare for all. Your plan is not Medicare for all. It's not even Medicare for some, because in your plan there's not even a public option.
Our plan is to expand a universal health care system to all Americans. Medicare for all is not the name of a bill. Medicare for all is universal health care for all Americans.
But Medicare for all is Medicare for all, right? I mean...
Well, our health care plan would be based on Medicare and expanding it over time to more and more Americans. You lower the eligibility age and then you make it widely accessible.
Okay, I didn't see that in your plan, but I want to move forward.
So there's really we have two things here at Hardlands Media really that we consider okay, if we're gonna get behind you, here are the two things we need. One is, are you taking outside money or are you grassroots supported? Second is, are you for Medicare for all? Now, officially, as of right now, there's only two people that really have met that criteria. That's obviously Bernie Sanders and also Tulsi Gabbard. Now, Gabbard doesn't have as good of a Medicare for all policy because she doesn't eliminate private insurance and allows duplication, just like Australia does. But it's still a Medicare for all policy. Yang has gone from tying with Bernie Sanders in first by literally saying for most of the campaign, I feel like if you wanted to, you could make a video of Andrew Yang from a year ago arguing with Andrew Yang you just saw point for point. And Yang is no longer in that camp. His healthcare plan, again, has gone from tied with Bernie Sanders by saying I'm going to do what Bernie Sanders does to last place. It's worse than Biden's. It's worse than Pete Buttigieg, because at least they are saying we should have a public option. Yang isn't even going down that route, which is a tragedy that he is at that point. Now, I don't know why he's decided that this is the ideal way of doing things, because as far as we've covered before, the last person who went down this path was Elizabeth Warren. She was about here. She said, hey, I'm not going to do Medicare for all anymore, and now she's here. So I know that there's a lot of people that are Yang Gang that are like, hey, $1,000 a month, that's wonderful. Let me do some math with you right now, though. $1,000 a month, tax-free. If you are a single person, that's $12,000 a year. So if an average person in America is paying $500 or $600 a year, and I'm being a little bit generous with those numbers because a lot of people who are actually sick, way over $1,000. So if we say let's just say $500 here. And let's just say that there's no taxes or anything associated with that.
$500 for healthcare?
Yeah, a month.
A month or a year?
A month.
Okay, I thought you said a year. I was
no. That was
buddy.
Yeah, that would be a little different story. So let's just say 500. Okay, so now you effectively have your wonderful freedom dividend that is cut in half. Effectively, before you even start, you have half of a freedom dividend right now, right away. So now you have $500. How much is housing? Oh, right, it's usually more than $500. So the freedom dividend, if you don't have the Medicare for all system in place to tie down these costs, gets eaten right back up by the healthcare system. And then where are you at? You don't have a minimum wage. And I know that a lot of people have, been going, hey, look, minimum wage, this is a way around it. Freedom dividend, it bolsters all your income, which works out basically the same way. So that's that whole path right here. Now, the other thing that really got me about Yang when he did that segment was he's saying like, hey, we don't want to make a big disruption. The last thing we want is a disruption in the markets. People have their health care and they're happy with it, which of course is Joe Biden's talking point. Why is he using it? I guess sharing is caring. But even though that's the case, even though he's saying that, now let me just rewind and just kind of use the same logic from Yang to another thing that Yang says. Yang says automation is inevitable. We can't stop progress. We just can't. It is impossible to do so. We have to keep it going. But Yang, why don't we just stop automation? It's a big disruption. People will lose their jobs, so let's just stop it, using your exact same logic with healthcare and people currently having plans. And so he also says, hey, but they might have negotiated these plans. You know what you do? You have your Medicare for All plan that you should have put out, and you have a little stipulation in there, and it says the money that is no longer being spent by the employer on healthcare has to immediately go into salary. That's the solution. I don't know why I feel like, do I get an award for thinking of that? That seems really basic. Bernie Sanders has talked about that kind of a path candidly a few months ago. So what is it with Yang? Why is he all of a sudden deciding that he doesn't need to have a campaign? And because he has a number of groups of people that are following him. And I know a lot of people that were former Bernie Sanders supporters 2016 that are now for Yang. And I'm going to expect that the same thing that happened with Warren is going to happen with him. That all the people that liked Yang, who are like, I'm a Yang guy, he's thinking future, are going to go, but that was predicated on you doing Medicare for All. And if you don't do Medicare for All, then all the money that you're going to get from your freedom dividend is just going to go right into healthcare bills. And then conversely, Bernie Sanders is going to have a $15 minimum wage, which is $15 an hour. And for all the people that are going to go, but Yang has pointed out that automation is happening and your jobs are going to go away. I'm going to go, good point. Tell him that exact same thing with healthcare, like I just said earlier, if that's the point you're going to make. What do you guys think?
Yeah, that's a lot right there just for that one video clip. I think from the video clip specifically, I think the journalist in some ways held him to task on the fact that it's just like, hey, you're talking about Medicare for All, but this is not Medicare for All. It's like, well, Medicare for All is not a bill. And he's like, but it is at least Medicare for All. Like, at least be true with the words that you're using, which you're not. So I wish that the journalist would have just been like, yeah, but it is a bill. Like, no, you're factually wrong on that. It actually is a bill. So I don't know. The fact that
and can I say one more thing on that? That he's literally going with the same way he got, like freedom dividend. We've talked about on the show and we thought it was really clever. He's like, well, it's basically universal basic income, but that doesn't poll as well. So we found freedom dividend, and that gets Republicans, that gets independents, that gets Democrats. Everyone's happy. He's literally applying marketing tactics to the name of what he's doing, because what he's doing, Medicare for All is a specific thing. It's a specific bill. It's a specific concept built on a specific program that's been defined since 2016 by Bernie Sanders to be a very specific thing. So it is so if you say Medicare for All, I'm for Medicare for All, what you're saying is you're for a single payer system that taxes people like $300 to $400.
Yeah, but you can't register a trademark with your bill's name. Like,
yeah,
right?
But it still goes the same way. So if Andrew Yang is going down the path of, I'm going to call it something that's popular that people like, but then I'm going to say in the bill that actually people don't pick one. You have to pick one. You can't pick both. Your logic implodes on itself. It's either Medicare for All would be a great idea, but no one wants to do it because they're happy with their individual healthcare system, and that has to be one bundle, but they cannot exist at the same time but we're using the terminology of a completely different system that is very specific and is not what he is arguing. So you have to pick one. If you pick both, then you're really just saying I'm a hack on this specific issue and not interested in having a consistent meaning, because you're saying one thing while completely defining another at the same time that he is using commercials saying I'm for Medicare for All when he isn't.
Got a super chat here.
Oh.
Thoughts on the city of Detroit?
Big Baby Zubas?
Yeah, from Big Baby Zubas. Happy New Year. from Detroit. Thoughts on the city of Detroit?
Yeah, say
Specific
something.
thoughts on the city of Detroit.
Say
You're
something in the
asking for our
comments.
thoughts on the city of
Say something in
Detroit?
the comments, please. Explain your position. I'll try to.
You
watch
also
for
you
it.
know say about Detroit, hell of a lot better with Medicare for all than just UBI.
I agree. I also haven't been to Detroit in a very, very long time. So
I'm not gonna mince words. I don't like Andrew Yang. I think he's a joke. I don't like his UBI plan. I believe it's just a paycheck for landlords. That being said, he doesn't have a plan for healthcare. It's obvious. He doesn't have a plan. He spent all this time writing these silly little policies like the parties are, so he didn't have to go to big elaborate dinners with world leaders and all these other just hundreds of different proposals and ideas on his website when you probably should have looked at healthcare, dude. You probably should have looked at healthcare. You probably should have had something. At least Warren has a white paper plan. I mean, she's backed down from it. She's not going to fight for it. She's given up the fight before she's even elected. But to have nothing, to not be able to formatively say anything on your healthcare proposal is a huge fail for the Democratic Party, and you're running in the wrong race.
yeah, I think Yang is very much sort of like the libertarian-ish type candidate when it comes to finances and the economy and things like that. But he talks in this sort of not technocratic, but he talks about technology and advancements in AI and machine learning and automation that I think a lot of people were able to sort of latch onto it, and it rings true for a lot of people's experience. And also the UBI was the kind of thing that you can get a lot of steam behind. So I think that there's a lot of credit to be given to the Andrew Yang campaign, particularly for showing that you can have ideas and a sort of a base of support and be heard and be seen in the Democratic primary in the nomination for president. I think that's a valuable thing that we can take from it. But even pretty early on, his support for Medicare for all was a thing for me that I was like, I don't know about this. And UBI, I think, has some big questions that honestly I don't think anyone has really adequately explained to me. I still have questions on inflation for Andrew Yang. Like the big one is like, oh, the money will inevitably go. You said, money would go to landlords, right? And
It's
he
a
says
guaranteed rent check.
right. It's going to go to rent, and it's going to go to financial costs, and it's like, into healthcare costs, and it's like, well, are those sectors truly immune to inflation? And if people are barely meeting those needs now, but now they'll be more able to easily meet those needs, doesn't that also mean that they'll have more discretionary spending in other sectors? Like how is injecting money directly into the market not inflationary?
And here's the other thing that this goes to with Yang. Like, he's talked about, and I've liked how he's evolved and how he's talked about UBI. Like, when he originally talked about it was, hey, UBI, it's going to not solve everything, but it's going to be really helpful. And he's evolved that talking into UBI. It's a base. It's a foundation that we build upon. But what in his is helping MMA fighters? Is that one wall? Is that a sink? What are the walls? You have a foundation. Okay, fine. You have a foundation. I thought Medicare for all. That could be the walls. That would be a perfect thing for the walls. Also, another point of this, what is poll after poll after poll the number one issue for Democratic voters in this primary? Healthcare. It's healthcare. It's healthcare, guys. So when Andrew Yang goes from and again, we've commended him on his ideas. Like, I have a slightly different view on UBI, but I also have very similar concerns to what Paul has. But I like the idea that he has new ideas. I like the idea that this is a guy that came in with no political backing and has materialized a rather competitive campaign. I like the fact that he fought with MSNBC on these issues, but all of that is predicated on the idea that if he's doing that, he's taking small donor dollars
and Medicare for all.
And he's for Medicare for all. So if he is not in that spot anymore, sadly, he's actually closer to Biden now, just with the UBI.
I want to come back and say one thing. Props to Andrew Yang for telling MSNBC to F off.
Yeah.
Like, that's one cool thing he did.
Sanders hasn't even done that. Let's be real.